All right, we're back. Welcome to the show, Carson's Corner, your unofficial Maple Leafs post-game breakdown. I hope everybody is having a nice Merry Christmas out there. I've actually been like violently ill the last couple days for the most part, so I haven't been able to do a show, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm still not feeling the best, but I'm gonna do what I can tonight. As you can hear, I'm probably still sound like shit. But yeah, Leafs lose 4-0 to Washington tonight in what was a horrible game start to finish. They started half decent in the first period and then it just went downhill from there. You know, I think this is a game where you should have had Wall in. Again, I don't think it makes much of a difference. You know, maybe he makes you a couple of saves, but at the end of the day, Washington hit like I don't know what was like 4 or 5 posts in this game. It easily could have finished 8-9 nothing. So it was a game going in that I even said to friends, I'm like, there's no chance the Leafs are winning this game tonight. You know, I also thought too, like, you know, there's a chance that, you know, they play up to their competition. It's definitely possible, but you know, even after that win in Chicago, that was just kind of a miracle Hail Mary win that shouldn't have happened. You just still knew there was no energy around this team. They just look so dead. You know, I'm not sure if they've quit on the coach. Well, actually, I think they have quit on the coach. To be honest with you, I think they're just tired of Berube and his systems, and it's not working. Which I've said before, and then it got better for a little bit. So I thought, okay, maybe there's a little bit of hope in this system here, but it doesn't look like that's happening at all. And yeah, there's a lot of problems with this team that just seems to come out every night and just give you a lackluster effort. It's frustrating, you know. Uh, I mean, part of me honestly feels like I took for granted all of those seasons that the Leafs, you know, 9 straight years made the playoffs. Every game was filled with, you know, it was pretty fun. It was energetic. It was young talent. There was a lot of scoring. It was great vibes, you know. And I feel like those years that era of Leafs hockey is over for a long period here. Now again, maybe they come back next year and you know put something together and make it good. But it just this year they're just it feels like they're not trying, but it also feels like they're not trying with a combination of not having enough skill on this team to make any difference, even if they did try, which is what I kind of feel like they also feel themselves. That's why there's not much of an effort there, which is, you know, like I don't blame them sometimes for coming out the way that they do, but every game just seems to be a wait and see attitude. You know, again, first period they start half decent and then it just goes downhill from there. Every single game seems to be the same thing. They just run out of gas. There's not an offensive beast there, you know, anything to really get anything going. And this is where, you know, I hate to bring this up, but I think after watching tonight's game, it's very apparent that there's two main points that I want to bring up about the Leafs right now. Maybe even a third, we'll see. But the first one is that it's very apparent that Mitch Marner had a massive impact on this team. He was a huge offensive piece that was incredibly valuable on the penalty kill and on the offensive side too, which we all knew. But when you have a player like that who's so dynamic and can get to, you know, many different places at the ice almost at the same time, can defend super well, but can also be a super effective offensive player on the rush, and he's a playmaker. The Leafs are missing a playmaker, somebody who can just make short passes, cross seam passes, who is just constantly dishing, constantly having the stick out there. They can just make really simple plays to keep the play going in the offensive zone. Like the Leafs have almost no zone time. You know, it's so apparent that they're just missing a piece like that. And if they had traded for, you know, something that was even similar to Marner, you might think this season has gone somewhat differently, but it hasn't. You know, it didn't work out that way, and it's resulted in the Leafs just looking like a bottom feeder team this season with absolutely no will to win. And with that being said, the second point that I want to make is the fact that I think this team, despite their first season with Berube, just doesn't like this coach. I think they're tired of him bitching about every little problem and like his low event hockey, the systems that he wants to put in place. And I think personally, Berube is a great coach. I think he's somebody who's had success in the league, who's respected by a lot of players. He was a great player himself. But I think that for a team like this, with the core that it has, even without Marner on it, it's still a team that just doesn't want to play the way that Berube knows how to play hockey, which is it's a mismatch. And I don't think that you should reward these guys' current season by giving them a new coach. I don't think you can do that. I'd almost rather you got rid of the players and the coach at this point. I think it's a more valuable investment in the team itself to make. But it just, I don't think they want to pull that trigger yet, unfortunately. The only saving grace that I think that maybe keeps me alive at night when I'm thinking about this team is the fact that when St. Louis won the cup and I think it was 2019, they were dead last in the league at, I think it was January 1st. And they dug themselves out of a hole. They got it together, figured it out, and they went all the way and had a great run and they won the cup. Do I think that's going to happen again with this team and the attitude that they're showing? Absolutely fucking not. But I think that it's something that we can only really say once we watch the entire season, once the trade deadline goes by. We have the Olympics too at that break. I think there's a lot of things that have to work their way out in this team to really see what the final product is going to be like. I think it's still going to be bad, but I think that at the end of the season, you got to look at the pieces that you have and make a final decision on, how to move forward yet, like it's really tough. And yeah, I don't know. Like, the Leafs almost never got shut out in those 9 seasons, and it seems to happen more and more frequently now. It's the offense is a problem. A lot of the top six guys haven't been scoring. The bottom six guys, it's becoming a struggle every single night now to get offense. And that was something that you could, almost bank on in the beginning of the season, that they had the offense. They were, I think, getting some lucky breaks with pucks here and there. And now that the season has had a couple of months pass and, teams are really set in and they're really up to speed, the Leafs aren't getting those breaks anymore. They're not scoring those little easy chances that they would usually get. And I think that the rest of this season is going to get worse and you're going to see a lot more times that the Leafs get shut out, and yeah, if I was the Leafs right now, I just wouldn't make any trades. I would just say, look, grind it out, see what you can do at the end of the season. We'll see what we got and maybe make a coaching change, even though I don't really support that. I think it's more of a player problem at this point. I think you got to make some trades, which, they don't really have assets to make trades either, but I don't know. It's a pretty desolate sea out there right now with everything. I think, again, Matthews has been so quiet this year. I don't think he'll ever necessarily get back to what he was. I think he's getting older. The injuries have plagued him a bit. And I think he's just going to be, I think he's going to be better than this season going forward. But still, I think that he's definitely going to be cheaper in his next contract. Maybe there's room to wiggle in another player there who's, a Marner-esque type of player. But it's still going to be a work in progress for a while. So again, I mean, this is a post game show, and I'm not really doing too much actual post game notes, but this is a really big statement game where you look at the Leafs and go, yeah, this ain't it. This ain't happening. This is going to be a lot of the same thing for the rest of the season. It's tough. So I don't know. Hopefully I'll be better for next game and I'll actually not sound horrible. But if you tuned in and listened to this show, I really appreciate it. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. All right, everybody. Good night. Cheers.